Welcome, one and all, everybody, to PSGL. It's time for Formula 4 once again. Now, I realise that I'm taking over streaming quality this week, which means it's been a bit janky and a bit rushed because I haven't had a lot of time to get these graphics set up. And I usually have my master volume really low so I can hear myself. So I'll have to turn it back up for the stream. Anyway, I'm Boffers, I'm George Bray, I'm joined by Reese Gregory, taking you through today's action around Albert Park.
A bit of a juicy track this one is, and it's been open a race for many years, but due to COVID, we didn't have it for the 2020 season. But with the new layout as well, because this is the 2020 game, it is the new layout where the changes for that would be turns 8 to 9 has allowed a lot more of an interesting race to come about from this track.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's interesting, to be honest. Generally, I prefer tracks with more corners. And what this has done is made the track much higher speed. You are hitting a much higher average full speed, much higher average speed around the lap. You're at full throttle for a lot longer. And as such, I think it's put more importance onto DRS, which is not something that I'm always a fan of when it comes to Formula 1. Generally, I think that DRS is a bit of a killer when you get into these trains. And as we've seen in the F1 games, the DRS trains are so prevalent because the gap between the drivers in terms of skill is so little. And as such, I think Albert Park can fall into a bit of a trap of being one of those tracks that ends up being a little bit of a DRS train with a few limited overtaking opportunities.
And when you do make those moves, though, and this is the counter argument, when you make those moves, it does turn out to be a spectacle, particularly, and might as well go through it, all the areas of possibility. So turns 1 and 2 is a first areas of overtaking. You can follow it through, get it into turn 1. You can have a good exit on turn 2, bang, you've got yourself safe. And the advantage of turn 1 overtakes is that you get the second dose of DRS. There's no second detection zone after turn 2. So if you haven't made the move on the first try, you've got turn 3 to mount another move. Now, there are some very ballsy opportunities, but I have seen it happen. Turn 6 overtaking a move has been done, but it is extremely rare, which then follows up all the way around now to turn 9 as the next overtaking opportunity. Again, extremely risky just because of how fast-paced that and natured 9 and 10 is. Again, don't make the move on 10, keep close to the car ahead, and you can mount a move into turn 11, the reprofiling of the track, making it a deeper braking zone and wider, allowing better overtaking opportunities. And then again, there's no real overtaking opportunities. You could mount one in 13, but again, it's very risky. And then you're back to turn 1 once again.
Yeah, sorry to make some noises over your lovely little introduction of the track run out there, but we just run a lap with Rishan, and it was looking like a pretty positive lap until he got to the final corner and span it, very nearly taking himself out of this qualifying session far earlier on. Looks like we have got some new entries this week as well. We've got Troy Parker, who currently leads the way in the Alpha Tauri. He is looking like he's a bit worse for wear in terms of connection as he skates about the track a little bit, but that skittish connection hasn't befallen him too badly with a 16.844 as the first runs out start to come to a conclusion. You mentioned to me in the build-up that we had some pretty dominant running last time out. Would you like to fill us in as to what happened in Belgium because we weren't able to commentate it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the lead has officially changed. Before we knew that Rishan only grasped the lead by 1 point. Well, he did not have a good race. He only scored himself 5 points that race, which allowed a can of worms to open. And guess who took the can of worms? Yes, you guessed it right. It's Milan Mayer, who is in second. He now holds the championship lead with 8 points behind, with Thomas Laminen also jumping up, taking second place as well from that race, and second place in the championship. Third place from Belgium went to Thomas Gal, who puts himself now only 5 points behind Rishan and into a prime position to maybe overtake him. He's currently only, if I get the numbers right, 5 points behind. 5. So it's all to play for. And then, of course, a few odds and changes further down. But that is where the main focus is at the front. And already from the get-go, a spin from Rishan in qualifying, I think he's buckling under this pressure.
Well, like you mentioned previously, and we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, that this hasn't really been the easiest start to a season for Roshan for what he would have initially anticipated. Obviously, he showed really good pace in Spain and a couple of early
Mm.
races, and then had a couple of weeks in the wilderness, really, doing sweet nothing. And another frustrating event last time, well, not last time out, but the time before, where he was basically stuck, bogged down the entire race, not being able to make any progress. Just poor qualifyings have really plagued him and held him back, I think, recently. So we're going to need to see some good qualifying performances today. And speaking of those, let's see if Thomas Laminen, who's just coming halfway around his lap at the moment, has anything to offer in that department. He hasn't really been like a pretty prevalent qualifier throughout the course of this season, I would say. I would say that his strengths have really lay within his racecraft, his ability to predict strategy. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do something around Albert Park, as we're already kind of pre-facing a little bit. Overtaking may be a little bit difficult around here, providing you don't have a massive pace differential, because everyone is so close and there's so much DRS. So we'll see what Thomas Laminen's got in the locker. It hasn't been a particularly overwhelming first and second sector thus far, but knowing him, or not,
Ooh.
potentially, that's another spin in the final corner.
Yeah, he's dabbing the throttle as he goes round that last corner. He's not confident. It's you can't see the graphics, but you can see him. He starts to go, lifts off, and then replants onto that throttle, which is allowing that rear end to kick out. Because you have to remember, these cars have got 1,000 horsepower.
Oh, I think I've lost you. I don't know what's happened, but I've lost Reese. That's interesting when that kind of thing happens. I hope he's okay.
Am I still here?
You're back now. Welcome back.
Oh, I don't know how much you heard about my throttle
Nothing
stabbing.
at all.
Nothing at all. So basically, the reason for Laminen to spin was throttle stabbing through the corner of turn 14. He was just almost like pumping the accelerator, and it was only a one pump that just caused it. It wasn't a fluid motion that you see these drivers normally do. It was a pumping action, which then caused too much power at the rear end, making him spin.
All right, well, an interesting throttle application strategy that we've seen a couple of times. And that final corner here at Albert Park is always a problem in these F1 games. They just are... It's one of those gradient corners where you want to get the accelerator down much harder and much sooner than you really can actually think about doing realistically. And you find the edge of grip very quickly, and the car comes away from you very quickly as well. You can go one of two ways. You can spin in towards the pit wall, which is often a bit safer because you've got some more ground to go off with there. Or you can just go straight away and snap into the outside wall and end your chances of getting a good qualifying position. So we've seen two of the former. I hope we don't see too many of the latter, because that would be quite disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, Milan Mayer not really had a great first run out. A 17.093, I think, was that last lap that he just put in. I don't know whether he's going again. There's no red light flashing, which would indicate to me that this is his charged up attempt here for one of your championship contenders, currently setting, if to be believed, a purple Sector 2, and we'll see just how this final complex of corners pays out for him. A little bit shy of the apex, but you don't want to be too close to it because of that sausage curb. Dabbing the accelerator off for just a moment before reapplying it very aggressively. Now into the hairpin, missed it slightly, but it won't cost him too much because it sets him up for the final corner, which he's managed to negotiate much better than those before him. That should put him into the 16s, but only just with a 16.887. That leaves him in 5th place presently.
Talking of the last corner, I mentioned about how that Laminen was pumping that throttle. Actually, Milan Mayer, he doesn't actually apply the throttle fully. So when he goes into turn 13, he builds it up, he doesn't go to full, drops back and lets the aerodynamics take the brunt of the slowing down, and then eases it back on. So a different strategy again on that final corner. We'll be seeing a lot of different throttle appliances amongst this track. And also Isvan Nage not improving. I was keeping an eye on him from P8, so he's still out of essentially the 10th of a second group.
Yeah, and at the moment, we're going to see some more improvements coming in from down the back of the field as well. I think Roshan has had another dire start to his particular run here. I think he's had another incident, or at least an invalidation, looking at it previously. But on board with his teammate at the moment, Alexander Johansson was 1/10 up through the first sector, but is now only 5 thousandths down, and he has span it. In the fast flip-flop, he has taken far too much curb for his own good, and he has had a rough incident with the gravel. Hopefully not too much damage or anything like that that's going to cause him to have a rough session, but still, this track is catching a few people out here in qualifying, Reese. It's not looking like it's a very friendly beast to tame today.
It is not a friendly beast, and it never has been. Well, the thing about Albert Park, it's challenging in the sense that you make a mistake or put too much on the curb, you're going to go off. If you don't apply the throttle in the correct way, you're going to go off. And it is a very demanding track. And I'm watching Rashan right now, and you can see that the way he's driving, he's not pushing the lines as much as he would normally. He avoided the curb into turn 4 as like a plague almost, but he is attacking these two, which you do need to. That's a car that spun. Hello and goodbye. So there's a hesitation for Rashan. He needs to put the time on the board as Liam Stevens goes a 10th fastest than Troy Parker, who is currently leading the session. As we watch Rashan through the final corner, he has got to nail this. How is he going to put this throttle down? He's going to do the same as Milan Mayer, ease off, and then apply it down. Cross the line, and it is quite a far away line. It's only good enough for P12.
That's the kind of thing that's been struggles for Rashan this season so far. His qualifying pace has foregone him in a few important rounds, and as such, the championship that he was once contending for kind of slipping through his grasp a little bit. Speaking of previous championship contenders, Thomas Laminen has just finished his second, or I think maybe even third attempt, and that has slotted him in now in P9, as I think Nicola Aleda has just slotted in also in P4, because that's bumped Menno down, who was previously occupying that spot. Liam Stevens, though...
Thomas Gal. Thomas Gal,
what's he up to?
Purple middle. And that's going to be a very good time. It's because he will take pole with a 16.667.
That is very good. I'm getting the impression the track is starting to ramp up a little bit now as we come into these final few minutes of the session. Obviously, at the moment, with the yellow flag present, I'm not quite sure exactly how long is left. 5 minutes. So we'll start to see some drivers opting for their final runs here, or at least preparing for their final runs very shortly. Speaking of one of those drivers, Milan Mayer out early at the moment and is about to start his final run. Is just finishing his outlap at present. As you can see, this lap is nothing special. It's very pedestrian, but that's to be expected as he winds up through the final corner here at Albert Park to try and put himself in a contentious position for a good result today. He needs it, of course, to keep that championship in his grasp. A decent turn 1 so far, Reese, but you can take us through the rest of this lap from him. Yeah,
hyper aggressive through that turn 1. He's trying to cut as much corner as he can. Here, you don't want to actually cut that corner. There is a sausage curb that screws you over, but here, you put your wheels over both curbs, but not too far that it catches on the inside. As we head up, turn 6, they over-rev in gear 7 before taking the turn, because there's no point shifting, because it's very quick. Dab of the brake, and straight up through into turn 9. Where we're going to see the fastest section on the track, and I love this. When you watch this from the side, it is beautiful to watch. Drop down to gear 6, dab of the brake, and then power it on. But you've got to be careful, as you can see the McLaren shaking because it wasn't confident and what took too much curb. And you have to take risks, and that's the easiest place to invalidate. Through turn 11, again, keep it nice and tidy. Watch your throttle. Don't over throttle the exits because you can easily spin. Turn 13, you will see these drivers nearly full throttle, bring it back to half, power it through, and power it to the exit. And this looked decent, but I don't think it's enough for a pole. It was just on the edge.
Yeah, it was looking like a very competitive lap, and I think Sector 2 was purple, but just wasn't able to keep up with Tomas Gal in that first and third sector. Tomas Gal still provisionally your pole sitter, and I think has another run left in a bank for him as well. So Milan Mayer, I think that's his session over. Everybody currently pretty much in the pits, aside from Alexander Johansson and Jerifu down in 14th and 17th respectively. Alexander Johansson gone out early, I think, to try and avoid some of the traffic, and is just starting his lap now as he exits the first sector, but invalidates almost immediately. That's not too bad. He can look after the tyres and recharge the battery and potentially have another stab at this one when he comes back around to cross that finish line. Now, out on track at the moment, no one is on a lap, really, or a live lap, but people are on out laps. Who do you want to go and take a look at for this next lap?
I want to see Sven Schumacher because he came in quite strong, definitely put in some strong pace. His results haven't come from it. So he's a brilliant qualifier. His pace is not there. His best points finish was twice in Canada and in Monaco. He got 6 points out of it. I'd have to do the maths to see which position that was, but that's his best position. But I feel there's something from Sven. Sven has something. He really does. He just has to make it work here.
Yeah, he has been a good qualifier previously and often opting for the more aggressive strategy to begin his races. If he gets a bad qualifying for whatever reason, maybe gets held up or just doesn't quite make the most of it for whatever reason, generally goes for that more aggressive strategy and makes some progress through the field. That he had to do that a couple of weeks ago, if you recall. But you need to see a little bit more out of him in terms of consistency, and that's got to start in qualifying, where you get your first laps in. And at the moment, this is looking like a reasonably safe and reserved first lap out, or first sector out, I should say. Only just under 0.04 of a second up on his previous best lap, and that really, at the moment, wouldn't be improving him in time or, well, in place at the very least. It would do time, of course, but now the second sector, often where there is a lot of time to gain, often where in their first runs drivers leave a lot on the table and now risk it all in their final run, and that is exactly what Sven Schumacher has done.
Car was unstable going through turn 9. It kicked out from the rear end, and then as he tried to swing the car in the opposite direction with all the weight transfer, that was just enough for the car to go, nope, I'm going to hit that curb and spin from it.
Yeah, didn't really want to agree with it. And now Liam Stevens is also trying to set some pace as well. Debuting, I think, here in PSGL Formula 4. At the moment, this lap is not troubling purple sectors, I don't think. But he is 700ths up on his previous best lap. That would be enough at the moment to put him in P2. But with Thomas Gall's new lap of 0.2 faster than Milan Meyer, it would not even be close enough to putting him into P1. Nicola Aleda also slots in on that front row. That's going to push Milan Meyer back to the second row at the moment. Liam Stevens is now going to see if he too can leapfrog the McLaren driver as he rounds the final corner. Getting the power down nice and smoothly. No sign of any snaps coming out from Liam Stevens. And as the Mercedes crosses the line, he's able to improve in time, but not a place. Meanwhile, Jane Tripkov improves in time and place. And now Troy Parker behind comes through this final sector, up by nearly 1.5 tenths as he tries to make his mark on this qualifying session in the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, Laminen not able to improve as well, so he's going to stay down into P12, which is critical for his championship because he's out of the points right now. Rashan's in P8, so he can claw back at what he lost. But your main three not having a great qualifying. You mentioned Liam Stevens. P6, it's, I would say, fairly consistent for his qualifying pace. We saw him get second in Britain and then not pull out some great results. He got, I think it was P9 from Portugal and Belgium. So P6 here is a better position to find himself in.
Speaking of great results as well, Troy Parker currently resides in P2, and I don't think there's going to be many people presently able to really contest him. I think there's only 2 drivers that are on a valid lap at the moment, and one of them has just pulled out of that lap. So that should be the qualifying session completed. Tripkov, Aleda are not on laps as much as the timing tower might deceive you, and neither is Johansson. I think he's had another excursion with the gravel at some point, judging by the state of his car. So that leaves it then with your top 5 being Thomas Gall in pole with a 16.4, very clear from Troy Parker in P2. Jane Tripkov manages to pull it home for a P3 start, with Nicola Aleda joining him on that second row in P4. Milan Meyer heads up the third row with Liam Stevens for company in the Mercedes. This is going to be a decent race because this qualifying session has thrown up some curveballs already.
Yeah, and do you know what's even funnier? Troy Parker has only appeared in 1 race, and that was in Britain. He didn't score any points. He then, from there, because this is when he joined, from there, 2 did not start. So he did not compete in the other 2 races, which was Portugal and Belgium. And to get P2, it makes you question what happened in Britain and why he wasn't comfortable, because Britain and Australia, in my eyes, are very similar in tracks.
Yeah, they kind of are, actually, when you mention it like that. They're both kind of like speed tracks, a lot of downforce required through high-speed corners. You just need to have a great deal of stability and trust within the car. It's very similar in the way that you approach both tracks as well, from a setup perspective and a driving styles perspective. But either way, I think there's something to definitely be said for the results here. Tomascal making a good little return to the top is always nice to see. And I'm liking a good result finally from Jane Tripkov as well. Whether it can be converted into a race conversion would be a different story. He's not really been too positive in that particular aspect so far this season, but I'm still looking forward to something.
Tripkov he's won Monaco and then got third in Britain. And at that point, I thought, yes, Tripkov, finally, something was coming of it. He didn't get any points in Portugal, and then a DNF in Belgium, which really does not help you in this situation, as his only source of points have been on the podium. So maybe being a bit higher up might mean that he has luck. Is this some like weird voodoo stuff where you finish on the podium you qualify podium and then you finish there for Tripkov? I genuinely don't know. It seems very odd.
No, you're absolutely right. It is definitely odd and perplexing in the nature of his character as well. Kind of, there's an expression in motorcycle racing, which is some riders just win it or bin it. It's basically like, what was the expression that was used once?
Go big or go home?
Similar kind of thing, but yeah, you just basically throw it down the road into the barriers, or generally bottling point scoring positions, or you win it, basically.
Yeah. If you're that NASCAR driver, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, is finally we get the lights coming on. Take it away.
Yes, 5 red lights, and it's going to be away with the races. It's off the line. Tomascal with a pretty decent launch, actually. Manages to get away nicely, but it's Troy Parker who's covered him off in the second phase at the start. Hard tyres coming out strong for the AlphaTauri, and it's all changed at the front. Milan Meyer has been the one to make some progress. Alexander Johansson and Bartos Samaro changing places at the back. I'm not sure if they've been involved in any kind of incident. We've already got some pit stop strategy being put up onto the screen by AWS. Fantastic. Medium to hard or hard to medium. I think it's going to be the latter of the two. Liam Stevens holding position on the opening lap. Nicola Aleda taking a bit of a punter's chance and getting taken out, or at least taken down a peg by Milan Meyer. This so far, though, is proving to be a very, very positive start for these front three. In fact, arguably front four, but Milan Meyer is just that little bit further back.
Yeah, Rashan's had a terrible start. He's dropped 2 positions already. He's trying to fight back to Patrick Hadler, but we know Hadler's not one to give in. Though he doesn't fight a lot in the mid-pack at the front, he's a mid-pack runner. He is one that will hold the Ferrari behind and also attack onto Ben Schumacher as he looks to the inside, goes around the outside, and wow, Hadler's really going for this, and he ain't giving in around the outside. He's holding it tight, but he needs to be careful because he's going to allow Rashan to come up the inside and reclaim a position he lost off the get-go.
Yeah, it's still going to be a tough battle to keep your eyes on, though, and they'll be wanting to make as much progress as possible in these opening laps while nobody has DRS. Meanwhile, back at the front, Troy Parker already... Oh, no!
Rashan's
It's Rashan! No, it's not. It's
No,
Alexander
it's not.
Johansson. Oh, good lord, I thought it was Rashan. That was a bit of a disastrous one, and it's already happened. Cold tyres or whatnot, I don't know, but the safety car is out as a result. Thomas Laminen dives directly into the pit lane. So does Jerifu. I'm not sure whether that's a strategic or a damage-based pit stop from these two drivers. I think in Jerifu's case, it's definitely damage-related, but for Laminen, I'm not quite so sure. Either way, that's going to lay waste, I think, unless this is a VSC, to Troy Parker's plans at the front.
See. VSC, I can just see on the signboards, and to be honest, that's going to help Troy Parker. He dropped his ERS down to 50%. He used so much to try and get away from the pack. The rest of them are at 75, 80%, and there we go. It's a drive-through penalty for Andrew Karapi
for a few of them, I think.
Speeding under the VSC. I think there is a few.
Laminen
yeah,
and
Andrew
Jerifu,
Karapi. Yeah. So a few people getting the drive-through penalty, but critically, as I said to the front, Troy Parker, he's drained his ERS, and now the other two drivers have as well, which has allowed them back within the second mark.
Yeah, this is going to start to spread out a little bit, though, if this DRS doesn't come to the rescue of the drivers behind shortly, because whilst Tomascal has now been able to try and come with Troy Parker a little bit, Milan Meyer has not, and further back, it looks like Nicola Aleda has not either. Now, Menno might have just had a little bit of an incident. He's dropped down quite a few places, and he's currently getting harangued by Istvan Nagy down this front straight as well. Unfortunately, no move on the offering at the moment. If he shifts out towards the braking zone, then there could be something, but he's been reserved in his approach. And Istvan Nagy not taking any risks in that 11th position at the moment. But we'll keep our eye on that and divert our attention back to the front for a moment, where Tomas Gal is just holding in that DRS. And hopefully we might start to see things close up if Troy Parker does not just run away with this. A fastest first sector, and now again over 1 second ahead. That will be really, really pertinent come the DRS zone coming up very shortly.
He's draining his battery. He's down to less than 30%. Driver behind, which is Tomas Gals, have got 50. But then again, Jane Tripkov has got 38. So he's trying to keep up with Tomas Gal. But I don't see Gal really attacking. He's not doing anything to respond. It's an awkward one here because Parker is on that cusp. And if Gal wants to and risk a strategy that he is trying to commit, he could chase after Parker. But the longer he waits, the more Parker can then work on recharging what he's used. And to be honest, this track isn't easy to recharge on. You've got a couple of heavier braking zones, but that's about it. And that's the information as well. Fastest lap, Troy Parker. Now Tomas Gal knows he's used energy and he's probably suffering from it.
Yeah, and also the one thing you got to remember as well is that whilst Tomas Gal does not have DRS on the car in front, the car behind him, Tripkov, does have DRS on him. So it's only going to get worse here for Gal because he's not only going to be looking to try and drive forwards and try and catch Parker out front, but he's going to have to defend from Tripkov, which is ultimately going to make him lose time to Parker out front. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. I think Parker is also draining a bit more of whatever battery he has left to further solidify that advantage. But at the moment, no red light flashing, so no opportunity for Gal to make up any time.
No, but I tell you whose red light is flashing. It's on 1%. Milan Mayer. He was desperate to close that 1 second gap. He's brought himself back in, but this is going to cost him. It's going to cost him dear because, yes, he'll get the DRS, but he's so far back that really the slipstream and the DRS isn't going to have the same effect as it was if you are really close. Physics, children. Basic physics. And draining your battery as well. He now has nothing to pounce back, which now leaves him vulnerable to Nicola Adelaide, who isn't too far behind him and could, if he wants to, maybe put a little bit more pace and catch back up with Milan Mayer. And critically, he's got a lot more battery as well to do it.
Yeah, Mayer, like you say, destroying his chances with the battery early on, now losing DRS for the last 2 DRS zones. Certainly not helpful for Mayer at the moment, and you got to imagine his woes are only going to get worse unless he's just going to be overdriving the car in the corners, and we just saw a moment of that there with the rear stepping out on the exit of Sector 1. Not what you want to see, looking a little bit loose and free and fast with the rules, or at least with the way he wants to drive his car here for Milan Mayer. Definitely wants to try and stiffen things up a little bit. Now, obviously, we saw that Thomas Laminen and Jerifu went into the pits earlier on. Seems that they've both strapped on a pair of soft tyres, those red-walled tyres. Not sure what the strategy is going to be for those guys, and hopefully it doesn't completely ruin Thomas Laminen, but at the moment, 29 seconds behind the field with soft tyres on, you can't imagine it's going to be a good result for the Finn this weekend.
Yeah, and talking not a good result, Milan Mayer's gone wide. No, Nicholas Adelaide's gone wide. Unenforced error meant that he's gone wide and gone off the track. He's not lost 1, he's lost 2 positions, might lose a 3rd. Into turn 13 we go. He's gonna just hold on, but he's under threat for turn 14. As you can see, the Ferrari of Roshan, who was the championship leader, currently P3 in this championship, will definitely want to move. He want a sniff of the Williams. Down into turn 1, he's gonna have to wait patiently. He's got a second opportunity, as this is a double dose of DRS, where there's no second detection zone. And here comes Roshan down the inside. He looks, but he's going to have to concede for now. If he can stick with the Williams, he might be able to do something, but no, just a little bit too far back.
Aleda was very polite there, left in the space when realistically Roshan was not even alongside into the braking zone. So very, very polite from Aleda, obviously trying to avoid an incident, thinking that Roshan might be a little bit desperate, but just weathering his battery just enough to make sure that Roshan could not get through, and Roshan did deploy a fair amount of ERS there, I could see from the onboard shot. Meanwhile, out front, Troy Parker, the German, is just romping away with this race. Now, 1.8 seconds his advantage. Remember, it got cut down by a poor restart at the VSC, but it doesn't matter now. He's out front, and he is clocking in those times. It seems that Tomaskau, having to defend from Tripkov behind, is really hampering his advances on this lap as well.
Yeah, and what makes it better, Troy Parker has been limited use of ERS as well. He's been conservative, only dipping into his ERS reserves when he needs to. He knows that the corner's slower and just needs a little sharpness. He's moved himself from a danger zone of 20% all the way back to 44. So he's now got charge and energy, while he's about the same as the rest of his competitors behind him. So the top three, similar percentages. Advantage Tomaskau with 57, but actually, it's getting close because Troy Parker's really charging up. He's not using anything.
I don't think you really need to when you've got this comfortable margin behind. Just as a quick update, by the way, Bartosz Samaro not having a fun race at all, just had a little bit of a spin, and as such, lost his front wing. And that is going to be a retirement from Thomas Lamminen. Not going to bother wasting his time on a race that he knows he doesn't have anything to come back into. But anything can happen in league racing, and that's why I never feel like it's really fruitful to retire this early on in the race. You never know, a safety car could bring you back into it, a weird shift in strategy. Maybe he knows that the weather isn't going to be on his side today, but you never know what can happen. Racing can change on the flip of a coin. It is that volatile, it is that unpredictable, and I feel like that might be a little bit of a defeatist attitude there from Lamminen.
Yeah, a massive defeatist attitude for sure, and I get why when you're that far back, and as somebody who does sit in that position quite a lot, when I used to do league racing, I was always at the back. I never was in the fight, and it sucks. It mentally drains you just doing lap after lap, knowing you're not getting anything from it. But the attitude you've got to have in those situations is go, right, I might not have the situation right now, might not be in a great position, but drivers might retire in the defeatist attitude. I might score a point, and that's going to help myself in the championship. I might be just 1 point better later on in this championship, which might get me, say, for Lamminen, might cost him the win. And it's as simple as a point. So stay in until the end. If it's the very last lap or the last three and you're still at the back, okay, fair enough. I get it, leave. But this early, no, you've got to stay in. And Tomaskau,
oh no,
3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. He's trying his best to hold back Tripkov, and it's causing pressure to him to allow himself to get too frustrated and push wide.
Yeah, and it's very easy to do on this track as well. Track limits are very difficult to maintain and manage because there are such high-speed corners that naturally make the car, which is already quite understeery with the F1 22 regulations, just want to wash out on you that little bit more and just drift off the track limits. Quick update on Rishan, by the way. He was in a battle with Nikola Aleda, who's had an issue, lost his front wing and dropped back. So Rishan now up into P8. But he has lost touch with Menno and is about to be susceptible to Istvan Nagy behind. I don't think there's going to be a move on here, but we'll keep our eyes on this little battle, providing Nagy doesn't plow into the rear of the Ferrari like he was nearly about to, as we come around the end of the first sector. Of course, one more DRS zone to really worry about for Rishan before he can try and get back into the wheel tracks of Menno, but at the moment that doesn't really look like it's going to happen. Rishan might have to opt for a different strategy here. I don't know what his ERS situation is looking like, but for some reason Menno is just putting time into him hand over fist this lap.
Yeah, and Menno drained his battery, that's why. And actually Rishan, out of the driver in front and the driver behind, is in the best position of them all. And I just want to make a point. Rishan, technically speaking, is in a position where he will reclaim second place in this championship. Is it going to be anywhere scraping away at Milan Mayer? No, he's already 9 points behind, and Milan Mayer is going to be getting a whole bunch of points ahead of him. So P8 is not good, and he's got to find some form of pace. And you are right, hand over fist. Menno is pushing, and he's pushing to try and get within the DRS range of Sven Schumacher, of which he's just done, but in doing so, he's cost his whole ERS reserve.
Yeah, I think we're about to see a move coming up here. Istvan Nagy was trying to line Rishan up in towards turn 1, and now he's going to try and do the same, but again, just not close enough. Roshan is holding station for the time being. We'll keep our eye on this battle. I think we're going to head back towards the front because Tripkov may be looking a little bit more feisty, or at least he was in the former portions of this lap, but seems that Tomascal has given him a little bit more of an answer. So closest battle on track at the moment is back down in P8. We'll keep our eyes back over there and see what's happening with that. And at the moment, Roshan driving sterling at the moment with in his mirrors, constantly looking. Menno, red light flashing ahead. He's 2 seconds behind, so I'm not sure whether he will be seeing that from that distance, but I could see it just then, as Menno is again starting to lose touch, and there's Roshan, this time with a 3-second time penalty for track limit infringements.
Well, this is then for position. Between him and Nage, it's for position, but for the drivers behind, that's great news. For the ones you can see, that's hope. That really is hope for them indeed. Now, we're getting close to the point where... Which one was that?
Roshan is overdriving the hell out of this car on the final few corners.
Both of them are.
Two massive slides in 2 laps there that have inevitably lost him time. This is
well,
not...
both of them are, really. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump there, but Nage's overdriving as well. I saw him at the exit of turn 11 was completely putting the rear end out. So they're both really trying to push for what is a front of a train that they could wait until later on.
Yeah, you got to also think as well now, this 3-second time penalty actually will inevitably bump Roshan outside of the points in current position. He needs to get a move on and start trying to work up some kind of a gap, because we've seen gaps forming throughout the field so far. It's been a relatively spread out race for a league race, not even close to what I was expecting. I will say though, it has got noticeably darker overhead. I don't know if that's going to be heralding in any inclement weather, or maybe it's just going to bring the track temperature down a few clicks. That'll certainly help the longevity of these hard tyres if that is the case, but for the time being, this is looking like a pretty stagnant moment here, and one which Roshan needs to be very careful of, and maybe have a quick moment to think and assess what it is that he's going to be able to pull off with the remainder of this race, as Andrew Karapi at the back of the field now picks up his 3-second time penalty. You've got to expect that more of these penalties are going to be coming as the race progresses.
Absolutely. More and more. The thing about the street circuit is a lot of these corners, you are attacking the curbs. You're wanting to push as much as you can.
Another penalty for Nagy.
Oh, that's just adding up. You aggress onto the curbs, you try and find the cutting of corner, and you try and find moves like that, and Nage is not leaving any room for Roshan, which now leaves Roshan in plain danger of the Alfa Romeo behind of Miltos Karafalitis, and Karafalitis is going to go, yeah, you know what, this is fair game. I'm going to go for it, and Karafalitis, realistically speaking, can strike when he wants, and here he is. He's going to try and push and make a turn 9 overtake. If he wants. He has the energy, he has the power, and will he go for it? Comes up to turn 9, no, not here. Maybe a turn 11 overtake. Wouldn't be surprised for sure, because look, he's almost shoving the Ferrari down the road, activating all that he could down the inside. He hasn't got his nose ahead enough, so all that work, all the use of energy has come to nothing.
Some good racing there, though. Roshan left the appropriate amount of space and then turned into the apex, just cutting off Miltos Karafalidis' nose as he is entitled to do. So decent driving there from Roshan and well reacted by Karafalidis behind. So nice job from those two. Not quite as nice as what was going on in the first sector there with Roshan and Nagy. That was not particularly friendly, shall we say, from the pair of them. I think Roshan could have left more space on the outside and Nagy could have been a little bit more friendly on the overtake. So I think it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other for that particular incident, that excursion off track, and Roshan will inevitably not be happy about it because it's now left him outside of Nagy's DRS window. He's now going to furiously try and get back within inside of that. But at the moment, he's just teetering on the precipice, and he would really very much like to get into that DRS before turn 9 comes around.
He definitely would. He's right on the fringe here, but I don't, just to the way it curves, I don't think realistically he's going to get enough slipstream to get himself in. No, he's nowhere near. He's 1.1 second behind. So, all brilliant work for Nage in the sense that he's made the move and got ahead, but he still has a massive penalty to deal with. 6 seconds worth of penalties. It's going to be an ask, but never put it out of a driver, because if you put your mind to it, you easily can make up the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of a couple of problems in paradise here, trouble in paradise for Troy Parker is he's just got himself a 3-second time penalty. At the moment, that will not make him lose the race win, but if Jane Tripkov gets any funny ideas about overtaking Tomaskal, he might be in a spot of bother. And we are about to be approaching the pit stop phase in not too long of a time now. Karafalidis, all 4 wheels off track there. I'm not sure whether he's going to get a warning for that, but I've seen a couple of drivers in that particular circumstance at turn 1, and it has been a bit of a lap killer in qualifying as well when it comes to track limits. So you'd anticipate that that's where a lot of the mistakes are being made here in the race too. But we'll keep our eye on that little time frame at the front. We'll still keep our attention drawn here, as it is the closest battle on track at the moment, apart from Nitro Shooter and Patrick Hadler, but they're in a train. So these two are more likely to get by one another, as it is definitely not so much in the train at the front of it.
Yeah, and Karafalitis definitely will not want to wait behind. He's not really pushing. He's actually at the moment just using natural speed to get him past. His best opportunity, realistically speaking, off a good exit is here. Down into turn 11. He made the move once. He knows he can do it again. Otherwise, turn 1, he doesn't have a good exit of turn 14. Not normally. So, realistically, it's either turn 9, which is brave and bold, as Troy Parker's pitting, by the way, and going for the mediums, just while we were talking. So he's going to trigger the first of the pit stops. And that's interesting. Lap 15 and mediums.
Yeah, that is very interesting. We'll see just how that pans out, but he is getting the race leader into the pits, and as such, I think that's drawn a couple of other drivers behind him into the pits too. So we'll see whether this is going to unleash a couple of drivers, make them go a little bit harder in the paint. I think maybe for Troy Parker, in order to secure his race win, it's probably the right move for him to just get that advantage early and then force the drivers later on to have to come back at him when their tyres are also not feeling optimal. But back on the Karafalidis topic, I've been watching his onboard for the last half a lap or lap or so, and his exits out of turn 1 and turn 9 have just been what's cost him. He gets close through this little section here around through turn 8, and then as soon as we get into turn 9 and 10, he just ends up losing ground on the exit to Roshan. He's not willing to take the same amount of risk that Roshan is, and as such, he just loses too much ground to make that overtake when it comes into the tight right, just up ahead at the start of the third sector.
Yeah, huge understeer on the exit of turn 11. You saw the car just did not want to turn, so not confident. Jane Tripkov's going to be pitting. Hello. That's going to be interesting. Let's keep an eye on where Troy Parker is. He's rounding the final corner, so Troy Parker is going to easily, at this point, let's see where he comes up to. Yeah, cleanly and without a worry, going to get past Jane Tripkov. And I think he might gain time here, because he has used a lot of ERS to do so, but now he can relax with, what's that, 4-second lead.
Yeah, you also got to think about the fact as well that he also has warmer tyres, which is going to extend his advantage over the next lap too, while Tripkov and the rest of the crew behind have to take that time throughout the first and second sectors to warm up their medium tyres. Now, I did see a red light flashing there from Parker, which I think is indicative of just how much ERS the German has been using on this outlap and second lap on these tyres. But the outlap is critical here. He doesn't want to give them an opportunity to get any closer to him. He wants to be the one to take the fight to them and get that race win secured from this point onwards. And I think it's a bold strategy, but I think it could be the right one, because it forces the hand of the drivers behind at the later stages of the race, where they just might not have it.
Absolutely. And to be honest, Troy Parker is down to 5%. He's using every ounce of battery he can. More power is all he's screaming. You can imagine him as a normal F1 driver. I need more power! Alright, strap 2, let's go. As he's going to round the final corner. How much of a gap does he have as the Red Bull? Has he made his pit stop? He's made the pit stop. And he will lose out, but by how much? 2 seconds. How much is his number going to increase further? As,
oh dear.
3, 4... Jesus.
It might even be up as far as 5 by the end of the tyre warm-up phase for Tomaskal. Potentially pushing 6 if we're not careful here. Maybe 5.5 would be where maybe I expect that to come on out. But Tomaskal has lost a shed load of time in just 2 laps of Troy Parker giving it the big one. And that is now 5.5 seconds the advantage. Of course, with that 3-second penalty applied, it doesn't matter to Tomasz Gal, but it matters to Tripkov, who is sniffing the gearbox of the Red Bull up in front. Remember, Tripkov, he pitted a lap earlier, which means his tyres are going to be that little bit warmer. But it seems at the moment that with the ERS being used by Gal up ahead, that Tripkov is just not going to be close enough. Now through the fast kink of turn 9, he gets a snap of oversteer. That's going to lose him all of that time that he gained and all of that momentum that he had to try and put the moves on Gal ahead. Tripkov just loses his opportunity and will have to wait for another one to rear its head.
Yeah, and I'll tell you who else lost out as well. Milan Mayer lost out to Menno, dropping down to P5, and that's then backed him right up into Liam Stevens, who nearly had the opportunity on the same straight turn from turn 8 to turn 9, but just couldn't capitalize on it. But I think Liam Stevens, if he puts in a good run, no, he's not attacking, so he's just waiting patiently.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to attack right now. I think Milan Mayer is going to be trying to use as much of his battery as possible to get in the DRS of Menno. I think that's what Stevens is also recognizing. He doesn't have to do anything brash here because he can just wait for Mayer to run out of his battery and then make the move quite easily later on. And as such, just get dragged along, because while using battery, you're going to be getting dragged along, aren't you? It's just the faster driver in front, keeping that DRS, you'll always catch back up. Sven Schumacher is now joining the party, as is Istvan Nagy. But I'm curious, Istvan Nagy is in P8. Where's Roshan? What happened to him? Well, he's down in P12, 2 seconds back of Patrick Hadler in P11. He has made his pit stop, but I have no idea what happened.
I honestly wasn't watching. And tell you what, give me a few seconds, I'll find out for you.
Wonderful, because that is far from ideal for Roshan. Of course, with that 3-second penalty as well, he'll be looking at a very, very poor result here unless he can get his skates on. We already saw in the opening couple of stints, or the opening couple of laps, he didn't really have the same pace as the drivers ahead of him, at the very least to try and catch back up. Speaking of catching back up, though, Tomasz Gal is on a bit of a run here. He's gained over a second on Troy Parker in front, and that gap is still coming down. It's now 4.3 seconds. Remember, it was at 1.5.6. It's now 4.1. Whatever is going on here is very, very worrying for Troy Parker out in front, because Tomasz Gal, the medians have come onto his car, and all of a sudden, he is looking like a man possessed in terms of the way he's driving. Maybe his setup just favours the softer compound, whereas Troy Parker had much better pace on the hards. Whatever it might be, it's working for the Hungarian here, and he's hunting down the German, but I don't think he'll really be close enough. It's going to be Tripkov who is the man in a position to capitalise here.
Yeah, in answer to Roshan, he seemed to have a poor outlap, a 125 outlap compared to his normal race pace of a 120 and a 119. So I wasn't able to compare it to the others. I didn't check, but that seems a bit off, being what, nearly 5 seconds down from your time. Something must have happened. It must have gone wide to allow a couple of cars to go past.
Yeah, you got to think so. Something must have happened. Got caught out on the pit exit or something. Maybe just came out in the wrong bit of traffic. Who knows? Whatever it was for Roshan, it has royally put a Debbie Downer on his race. He's going to need to get some serious work done if he wants to get back into the points. He's 2.5 seconds at present behind Patrick Hadler. With that 3-second time penalty applied as well, he will not be making points on current pace, so needs to get his foot down and get his head down too. Istvan Nagy with another time penalty, though. That's 9 seconds worth of time penalties for track limits excursions for Istvan Nagy. That's not the best day at the office for the Hungarian McLaren driver. And as such, I think it's going to be an interesting week for him. I don't know where that will put him. Inevitably outside the points. Inevitably down as far as P12, I think. Providing the penalties don't get any more for the drivers behind.
Troy Parker's panicking. The way he's driving, he is panicking right now. He's constantly using his ERS. The instability in what's happening. He saw the numbers dropping down, and he's done nothing to conserve the battery. Absolutely nothing. So he's scared. He's scared, and he knows Tomasz Gal at the pace he's going, and he's probably got a mental, that professional judgment to say, Gal is not going to really use his ERS. He's going to save up. He knows he's got a fight with Tripkov behind him, but the raw pace that Gal has means that Parker is in danger here. If he does not, if he stops to try and recharge, his gap will go.
Yeah, unfortunately for Gal, he's only got, well, 8 laps now, really, to try and bring this gap down. And whilst he did get it down to 4.1, the last 2 laps, Parker has managed to eke it back out by 4-5 tenths of a second. So that gap is stabilizing a little bit, despite Parker's worrisome driving style, where he looks a bit twitchy and uncomfortable in the car. He still has plenty of time in reserve over the drivers behind, even with that pesky 3-second time penalty applied. He needs to be careful, because the only way in which he can lose this race at the moment will be if he gets another time penalty. So just needs to drive within himself. Like you said, he was looking like he was a bit panicky, losing the car a little bit, constantly pressing the ERS. He just relaxes a little bit, but keeps his pace nice and clear, and hopefully there's a chance for him to win this race. And at the moment, he's looking like my winner.
Absolutely. It's nerves at this point. When you're in this position, when you are in a good position, and you're not used to it. As I said, he only raced in Britain, and he didn't score any points. You're about to win a Grand Prix, so your nerves and the adrenaline is going everywhere, and especially because you can't physically exert it like you would in a normal car, or say in a normal contact sport. You can't like lash out or whatever, get the adrenaline going to a part of the body. Instead, it's going to your hands, it's going to your feet, you get panicky, and then this twitchy behavior comes out. So that could be the other way he's looking at it.
Oh, here we go. Tripkov dives into the apex and manages to make his way by, rather cleanly, I might add, by Tomas Gal. It looked a bit dive bomb-esque, but Tomas Gal has just moved him out of the way as a little bit of a snap of oversteer comes for Tripkov. So they're going to be trading blows now. And if Troy Parker is seeing that changing on his timing tower in the top left of his screen, then he is going to be rubbing his hands and licking his lips, because he knows that these two fighting only strengthens his position, and they just lost a second to him in that sequence of corners alone. That is exactly what Parker wants out front. Tomas Gal does not want that. In fact, what he wants here is to just work with Tripkov to make sure they're continually pulling away from Menno.
Absolutely, and it was aggressive and early. We don't really see moves until lap 27, really, to have a fight. But if you've got the pace and you know you've got the pace, then yeah, go early, try and pull away and close down the gap, or to solidify yourself in that position. So I see why, but it didn't pay off. The lunge was just that little too deep, and that cost him dear. And now he's going to have to, well, he's got the same ERS, so, but he'll want more to feel more comfortable to actually make another move.
Yeah, speaking of making a move, by the way, I think Milan Mayer might be looking a little bit feisty to make a move, but we'll see what Tripkov's got. Nothing. Now, Milan Mayer, what's he up to? Maybe just a little bit too far back for a move here, but or maybe also just holding station, because he's been around 3/10 this entire time. So we'll have to see what comes of that. Quick update on your other championship protagonist, Rishan. Nowhere to be seen. Not made any progress really onto Patrick Hadler, and as such, I think his race is pretty much run at this point. But the action really is going to be up the front for the P4 and at the moment for P2. I think P1 is going to be pretty easily locked up if these two start fighting. So it's going to be a question of who can fill out the other point scoring positions at the moment as well.
Yeah, Milan Mayer's really pushing Menno right now. He just needs a good exit here, and he could actually make the move. But again, it's about strategy. Do you want to risk it here? He's got 51% ERS, and compared to the 43 from Menno, he's got the ERS advantage. He doesn't know this, as Rishan's going further back, which is even worse. But yeah, Milan Mayer, he's in this position where he's going to have to wait. As I said, lap 27 is when you really want to strike. That is the earliest you want to strike, unless you get a clean and easy overtake where you don't have to sacrifice any form of battery at all.
Yeah, at the moment, Milan Mayer's just biding his time. Early back off at the end of these DRS zones, basically turning his DRS off, just lifting and coasting. Basically doing everything he can to charge as much battery as possible for that big final assault. And it's going to be coming very shortly, you imagine, because he is just driving very reserved at the moment. Looks very, very happy to sit behind Menno. No real urgency, no real threat. He's quite happy where he is. He knows that Liam Stevens isn't going to be able to put the moves on him because he has the battery to A, defend, and B, the DRS on Menno in front, so he's all happy. all quite chill.
There
In
we
fact,
go.
Never mind.
Here we go.
I lied.
Yes.
I capped so hard. He's gone for a move up the inside just with Slipstream alone, and he has made it work. He just needs to hold it now through this sequence of corners. He's kept it clean. He's going to dump the battery by the looks of things, Reese. He's going for it, really sending it. He's at least now held position at the end of this lap. He's now going to be able to get through at least lap 24 with it, as Rishan goes from bad to worse with another time penalty. But now, will Menno be looking to put the moves back on to Milan Mayer? At the moment, it's going to be about this exit. Can he get it nice and clean? Well, 3/10 back, extending to 4. Milan Mayer touching the ERS on the exit of the corner, but with DRS now available, where's Menno going to make a move? Not yet. Maybe the second DRS zone coming up.
Yeah, at the moment it looks like Roshan is going to play defensive. He's dumping a little bit of battery on the start of the start of the turn, and then the exit of the turn, and just using that as defense only. So he is at a disadvantage right now. So the cards are in Menno's favor, and this is the point where if you're going to make this move at this point of this late in the race, you have to push or pull away. You can't sit like this, because you now expose yourself to a can of worms, because we know Menno wants to fight. He's been holding that fourth position for a good while. So I would not be surprised, lap 27, he goes for it.
Yeah, well, at the moment also with Tomas Gal holding that 3-second time penalty, there is still a chance if Milan Mayer can really get a shift on, he could get inside of that 3-second window, but he really, really needs to get the hammer down. It needs to be hammer time. Needs to be, as Michael Schumacher used to have told to him by his race engineer, 15 qualifying laps in a row. But in this case, just 4 quali laps will do. We don't need much more than you from that, Milan. And at the moment, that gap is now, what, 0.6 of a second? Of course, with the DRS double helping here, that will reduce it somewhat. But off the corners, I've got to say, Milan Mayer just seems like he has more in hand naturally with the tyre life and with the way that he's driving as well.
Ripkov has gone for an attack, and it's failed. He's gone for the attack, and he's not even made a dent at Gael. Just nothing. He's got no ERS left. He did it too early, and he's down to 14%. Thomas Gal is 27. So, well done, Gal. He's got a few laps to defend off. He doesn't know if Tripkov is still attacking. Yeah, Tripkov is trying to push. He's down to 5%. The red lights are flashing, and that's the red light of death. Unfortunately, the Red Bull driver is not going to be seeing this and still going to defend like he thinks that the Haas is going to attack.
Yeah, little does he know, I suppose, that the Haas does not have the ERS available. Unless he's got somebody in his call telling him. But as far as I can tell at the moment, Tomas Gal driving in his mirrors, driving very, very well. That gap as well to Troy Parker has come back down in the last lap. I think both of these drivers now really trying to get the pace out of their cars, squeeze the last bits out of these medium tyres. Also, you got to think that Troy Parker, he pitted significantly before Tomas Gal, so maybe we're starting to get to the point where the delta is starting to fall off for Parker, but I don't think it's going to be enough to trouble his chances at the race victory. Still got at least 1.3 seconds in hand over Tripkov, which is his main threat at the moment with those 3-second time penalties, and Tripkov is being held up, you would say, by Tomas Gal in front. At least when they're fighting, that certainly seems like the case.
Yeah, and I made a point at the start of this race about Tripkov. When he gets a good qualifying position, he pulls out good results. And there you go, ladies and gents. Even P3, well, actually, no, he will bounce up to P2, which will be, as he's won one race, he has got third in another. Now he's going to take second place. He's got the whole medal cabinet.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming as well for Tripkov. Feast or famine, really. Doesn't tend to score, but when he scores big.
Oh, yeah.
So this is some really good results for him, and that will certainly put him in a strong position in the championship. I'm not sure whether it'll put him in a good enough position to contend, considering we only have, I think, 2-3 rounds left. So as such, I think for Tripkov, this is pretty much the best that he can hope for. Just racing for himself at this stage. Racing for his pride. Racing for his own edification moving into season 33. And at the moment, Tripkov is not really looking like he's going to be making too many moves. I think he realises when he's beaten and just needs to stay within that 3 seconds and not take any risks. Milan Mayer, on the flip side of things, is still pulling ever so slightly on Menno, but is still not going to be close enough, I don't think, to snatch that third place away from Tomas Gal at present.
It could be all down to the last lap between the fourth place position. It really can be. Milan Mayer has about the same, well, I was about to say it's about the same battery, but now Menno's tried to go for a pounce early. So Menno, realistically, if he wants to try and attack, he needs to save. He needs to save a lot. Try and get what he can. Any last juice, power it down at one point. Realistically, I feel your best opportunity will be turn 3. Not turn 3, sorry. I read to sector 3. That's the bit I was reading. Turn 11. And try and make a move down there. But you have to save on this lap. And I don't think anybody is because, yeah, Menno's got 6%. Liam Stevens on 3. There isn't anything left.
No, I don't think there is. And also, Menno picking up a 3-second time penalty on that last time round Albert Park means that pretty much P4 is secure now for Milan Mayer. The only way in which he can make it less secure is if he scores P3, but even that is looking unlikely at the moment. The gap to Tomas Gau is definitely over that of 3 seconds, so Gau will hold on to his podium as now this final lap takes place, and with the gaps between all of the drivers, it looks like it's going to be pretty uniform. Standard procession as everybody makes their way on and around. I think only one driver might be looking to be a bit contentious with things, and that might be Istvan Nagy, but with the 9 seconds of time penalties that he's accrued, I don't really think there's any reason to be going for any moves on Sven Schumacher here other than pride and irritation for the Haas driver. So that isn't looking likely. Patrick Hadler might yet have something to say to Miltos Karafalidis, but not going to go for the move up into the end of the first sector. Might have to wait for that turn 11 move that you were prefacing just a moment ago.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone realistically has got a move in the bag now. They're all too far back. There is no opportunity. There's no ERS from Menno. There's no ERS from Tripkov. And that brings us back to our race leader. Somebody who we did not expect from the get-go was almost a nobody in this scene. He'd done one race in Britain. He didn't even score points. He didn't appear for the next 2. And then he comes back. Troy Parker has been a force to be reckoned with. Qualified P2, he rounds the final corner, not only leading this race, but being a race winner in PSGL F4. Troy Parker wins this race.
What a drive from Troy Parker, and it looks as if Tomas Gal is going to hold on to that podium for P3. Tripkov will claim P2 on penalties. Milan Mayer will bring it home for a P4 finish. Miltos Karafalitis will hold off Patrick Hadler to the line, it looks like, and he will. Istvan Nagy gets bunked on down outside the points with those 12 seconds of time penalties he had in the end. And the last driver to cross the line is Rishan, who had an absolute bummer of a race, ends up in P12 outside the points, and that damages his championship hopeful contention all the further as Milan Mayer scores handsome points in P4. But the story of the day, as you said, Reese, is one man. It is Troy Parker. From nobody to a race winner in PSGL. A stonking drive from him. Led from the first corner to the last. What a drive as he hits that griddy for the podium. Yeah, what an absolutely fantastic drive from the German.
Absolutely. It really is amazing to see. And it always creates a brilliant storyline as well. Is the... oh, yeah. It wasn't anything before, and getting that win, and that will, realistically speaking, if I do the maths correctly, 16 points will jump him all the way up to 15th in this championship. From what was he? 28th. He's reserve driver, and now he's in 28. He's gone from 28th to 15th. Wow. Massive jumps.
Yeah, what a story as well for Troy Parker. What a day for Troy Parker. I hope you'll join us next time as well as we sign off from here at Albert Park. It's been an absolutely wonderful race with a great story in Troy Parker. I hope you feel good about yourselves for a nice Thursday evening. And we'll see you at the same time next week for the 10th round of PSGL Formula 4. What's the track, Reese? Do you know?
It's the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, so it'll be the Yasmarin Circuit.
Oh, nice. New and reprofiled, just as the same as Australia was. We'll see you then. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega, proudly supporting PSGL.